A good morning to all of you. Your Excellency, Mr. K. Rala Shanana Gosmao, Prime Minister of Timor-Leste and Chair of 69th Session of Commission. Your Excellency, Lord Tuivakano, Prime Minister of Tonga. Your Excellency, Mr. Shering Topge, Prime Minister of Bhutan. Your Excellency, Mansavi Siriso Dupon, Secretary Ministry, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to you all to the second phase of the 70th ESCAP Commission session, which significantly coincides with the commemoration of the 70th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations itself. As you know, this is my first Commission session as your Executive Secretary. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of my predecessor here, Nolene Hesse. I watched the inspirational parade of nations this morning. I was struck by the thought that every flag represents not only a country, but the lives, hopes, and aspirations of millions of people. Women, men, and children in every corner of our region look to their leaders for a better future. No country can meet these needs alone. The foundations of the United Nations' success is that we do better together. I'm deeply honored to lead the Secretariat at this time, and I would like to start today by making you a pledge. Every member of the ESCAP team will redouble their efforts to deliver the more inclusive, sustainable, and resilient future our people deserve. But the Commission is only as effective as our member states empower and resource it to be. This is why I will use my first policy statement today to make the case for your support for an even stronger ESCAP. I will start by outlining the scope of our regional challenges and opportunities, and then talk about the changes we are making to the Commission to better support your development priorities. Ultimately, however, we are defined by the guidance, mandates, and resources which you provide. As we move into the next phase of global development and rising Asia-Pacific takes center stage, it is time to invest even more in multilateralism and in ESCAP, one of our region's most valued shared assets. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let me talk a little bit about the most topical topic, sustainable development challenges. As you know, there are little more than 500 days left to the end of 2015, the deadline for achieving the Millennium Development Goals. No region has done better than Asia and the Pacific. The proportion of people living in extreme poverty has more than halved from 52% in 1990 to 18% in 2012. The countries of our region have reduced gender disparities in education, reduced the prevalence of HIV and the spread of tuberculosis. Parallel progress has been made in increasing forest coverage, reducing ozone-depleting substances, and more than halving the proportion of people without access to safe drinking water. By 2015, our region is also likely to achieve the goals of universal primary education and completion of primary schooling. There is, however, no room for complacency. About 750 million Asia-Pacific people are still desperately poor. 360 million in our region are without safe drinking water. More than 1.7 billion are still without basic sanitation. And 3 million children in the region still die every year before they reach the age of 5. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'll say a few words about Asia-Pacific growth priorities. The key to closing our development gaps and achieving our development goals is economic growth. The Asia-Pacific region is well recognized for its contribution to global growth, which averaged about 70% between 2008 and 2011. But we cannot afford growth at any cost. To build the future we want, growth must be inclusive, sustainable, and job-generating. Asia-Pacific growth, while continuing to lead the global recovery, is now showing signs of strain. ESCAP's 2014 Economic and Social Survey that we launched yesterday forecasts a third successive year of average growth below 6% across Asia-Pacific developing countries. Our regional growth dynamics are being influenced by the anemic recovery in the developed world, given weak implementation of policy responses and lags in transmission mechanism of the impact of monetary policy normalization. At the same time, there are deep-rooted domestic structural weaknesses which are holding back the region's growth potential. Impediments such as infrastructure shortages, large budget deficits, environmental degradation, high resource intensity of production, and rising inequality must be urgently addressed. Overcoming these is vital to ensure higher, inclusive, and sustainable growth. Current average regional growth levels are subpar and insufficient to lift over 750 million people out of extreme poverty, and to simultaneously address our emerging challenges such as the impacts of global climate change. To address the wider development concerns requires focusing on and nurturing new drivers of economic growth. And in this context, the theme of our 70th session, the regional connectivity, offers a basis for higher, better quality and shared prosperity. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let me now take a few minutes to talk about our theme studies message, regional connectivity for shared prosperity. Asia-Pacific's economic dynamism has thus far been primarily driven by individual economies. The basis for much of our recent success has been international trade, foreign direct investment, and establishment of global and regional production networks and the web of global value chains, supported by improved trade and transport connectivity. To raise the bar on both levels and quality of growth requires us to more effectively exploit our regional complementarities and diversity. Enhancement of regional connectivity across the Asia-Pacific region requires political will and cooperation to explore what is achievable and what is optimal, to develop consensus on conducive approaches and modalities of engagement, and to put in place a game plan for how this will be achieved. ESCAP's 2014 theme study on regional connectivity advocates a more integrated and transformed approach and calls for exploiting the interdependence and synergies of 5 elements constituting the new drivers of Asia-Pacific growth: trade and transport networks, ICT networks, energy networks, people-to-people networks, and promotion of knowledge-based economies. By developing all these regional networks in a coordinated and integrated manner, the benefits from improved regional connectivity can be spread more evenly across and between countries, particularly to our least developed, landlocked, and small island developing countries. Part of this new approach to regional connectivity is to look beyond the extent to which networks are connected to one another and to concentrate instead on the level of effectiveness of regional networks in facilitating flow of goods, services, people, and knowledge. This is about shifting our focus from the quantitative to the qualitative aspects of connectivity and deepening the benefits reaching those excluded from the growth of these networks. What ESCAP is advocating is an approach which views connectivity as a shared regional public good. To develop, manage, and maximize regional networks requires Asia-Pacific countries to build consensus about the networks, the distribution of cost and sharing of risks and benefits, supported by the appropriate institutional and oversight mechanisms, long-term sustainable financing, and approaches to avoid the potential negative impacts of such growth. The right sequencing of policies and actions will therefore be fundamental, which is why the deliberations of the Commission this week on the 2014 theme study are of such importance. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I will now turn to something which has gripped the world with quite a bit of a depression, the subject of rising inequalities. The persistence of inequality in the region suggests that market-led growth alone is not enough to achieve inclusive and sustainable development. In the region, inequality is rising and pervasive. Different dimensions of inequality reinforce each other, creating an inequality trap that disproportionately affects all vulnerable groups. While income inequality is an important cause for poor access to education and health, the social marginalization of certain groups or geographic locations leads to similar outcomes, which in turn drives income inequality. Inequality jeopardizes the social cohesion and stability of societies. The inequality trap risks intensifying social exclusion and creating a group of bottom billion that would be left behind. Leaving individuals and groups behind could negatively impact the long-term development of Asia and the Pacific. Inequality dampens growth because countries cannot fully capitalize on their economic and social potentials. To reduce inequalities of outcome and opportunity, our region needs a combination of measures, in particular, redistributive policies, the enhancement of social protection, and promotion of productive and decent work, especially for our youth. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Let me now turn to sustainable development and its means of implementation. As we embark on the post-2015 Sustainable Development Agenda, we are optimistic that our region will lead the way, as it did in MDG delivery, but that we will also learn from those experiences. ESCAP will have an important role in supporting the final negotiations on sustainable development goals, as well as supportive financing and other means of implementation. In this context, the new SDGs, as reflected in the final report of the General Assembly's Open Working Group, stand out for their comprehensive coverage of development issues. They target 17 areas, 7 of which allow continued work on the unfinished business of the MDGs. The Asia-Pacific Intergovernmental Framework on the SDGs and their means of implementation, as well as on monitoring and accountability, a subject on which we had tremendous deliberations in the last 2 days, will be anchored around the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, which was held in Thailand. In addition, we will draw guidance from the United Nations Secretary General's synthesis report to be submitted by the end of 2014, which will integrate different strands of the development agenda, the SDGs, their financing, the Climate Finance Summit, and other key conventions. In shaping our response to this new global agenda, we must recognize that business as usual will not serve us well. This is largely because the depth and breadth of global sustainable development agenda is substantive, as evident from the many goals and targets likely to be agreed. The magnitude of this agenda underscores the urgency for new global partnership. ESCAP's work is therefore cut out. We will need to have a more holistic view of how we deliver policy and normative advice in some of these new emerging areas. Key considerations to be kept in perspective are that the sustainable agenda calls for 1. Balanced development of economic, social, and environmental pillars with emphasis on recognizing the interdependence and interlinkages. This means we need to position ourselves to form an integrated view of regional sustainable development. 2, we need to support member states in terms of institutional development to coordinate the sustainable development agenda across ministries and to ensure its effective monitoring and accountability, an area where regional commissions will have a leading mandate. 3, deeper policy thinking and consultations on different elements of means of implementation, in particular on finance and science and technology innovation. As with ESCAP Sustainable Financing Outreach Meeting, which was held in Jakarta in June, we need member states' consultation on science, technology, and innovation. There is an ongoing debate about the appropriate focus of science, technology, innovation discussions. I can't capture all the contours of this debate because of the time constraint, but let me just touch on few debates. Some advocate for enhanced technology transfer and facilitation mechanism. Others focus on promoting synergies and coordination between the current technology transfer initiatives, programs, and mechanisms already operating within the UN system and under the Rio Conventions. Example, the LDC's Technology Bank and UNFC triple C's, technology mechanism. There are also those who push for broader development of international cooperation in science, technology, innovation for sustainable development, where countries are able to develop the governance and regulatory frameworks of science and technology, policies and institutions to support the development agenda. And yet, others call for confining the STI, the science, technology, and innovation agenda, to cleaner technologies. ESCAP plans to set up an expert advisory group to define a pragmatic approach for Commission's mandate in this vital area. Excuse me. Let me turn to the fourth point. Broadening and deepening our knowledge bases to share best practices and cross-fertilize experience from other regions and within the region. My fifth point is on the development of statistical databases and strengthening of the capacities of national and regional statistical agencies. My sixth point that I wanted to highlight is regarding forming new global partnerships with private sector to adopt and promote a sustainable development culture and practices, as well as to engage private sector, philanthropic institutions and bodies in the region to nurture innovative approaches to development. Excuse me. Strengthening ESCAP is of vital importance for sustainable development and your priorities. The whole UN system is currently working to reflect on how best to deliver on sustainable development. This has extended to debates such as what is popularly called in UN jargon, fit for purpose. Discussions have been held at the Chief Executive Board of the United Nations. It is therefore vital for ESCAP to align its work and to position its activities in support of our member states in shaping and implementing this emerging agenda. My priority as your Executive Secretary is to seek your support to strengthen ESCAP in terms of its mandates and its resources to deliver three main imperatives: sustainable development, regional economic cooperation and integration, and regional connectivity. Among the most important focus area of the Secretariat to achieve this will be one, greater organizational efficiency. There are three distinct areas in which ESCAP must lead. With your help, I want to re-energize ESCAP as your regional and sub-regional intergovernmental platform, your regional think tank, your regional hub for knowledge on all issues of economic, social, and environmental development. We will need to further streamline our program delivery strategy. We need to integrate and synergize ESCAP's intergovernmental analytical and knowledge management functions. The Secretariat will focus on efficient delivery and providing the evidence analysis you need for better policy making and implementation. Two, we need renewed focus on countries with special needs. Our most vulnerable countries must be our priority in development delivery. ESCAP's primary support to our LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS will be in terms of assistance with integration of the sustainability agenda in national and sub-regional development plans, technical assistance and institutional strengthening, development partnership facilitation, improvement of statistical capacity, and by ensuring that the voice of these groups is more widely heard in global development deliberations. 3, better strategic partnerships. A key priority in the coming year will be ESCAP's long-term partnership with ASEAN, as well as with other sub-regional institutions such as South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, UN Special Program for the Economies of Central Asia, and the Pacific Islands Forum, as well as with multilateral development banks, the private sector, academia, and civil society. Our sub-regional offices will be critical in implementing this partnership focus, and our regional institutions will need to be strategized to play a key role in the areas of technology transfer, sustainable agriculture and mechanization, as well as statistical and ICT capacity building and other hubs which we may be creating. 4, we need to reinvigorate the intergovernmental process. There are a range of initiatives planned to boost ESCAP's performance as the region's premier intergovernmental platform. For instance, in terms of implementing the 2013 Bangkok Declaration on Regional Economic Cooperation and Integration, 4 working groups will be established within ESCAP to develop policy options for the second Ministerial Conference in 2015. We are also recommending for consideration of member states a regional tax forum to share best practices, avoid tax competition, and stem illicit transfer of funds. Global partnerships work or not, regional partnerships will work within this forum. Building on the outcomes of Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development will be our establishment of committees on energy, science, technology, and innovation, as well as on financing for development that you have called for. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to end by a few remarks by saying that I began today by making the observation that Commission is a truly valuable regional asset, yours and ours. The reason this is so is because our member states have been unstinting in their support for ESCAP and its work. For almost 70 years, to the credit of your governments, you have provided the leadership and resources necessary for the Commission to achieve great things, even in the face and times of financial austerity, global conflicts, as well as changing development paradigms. As we move now into the post-2015 development era, it is clear that the scope of our social and economic challenges has never been greater. It is also clear that ESCAP offers our member states the best intergovernmental tools to tackle these issues together. It is but natural to fine-tune and re-strategize as agenda emerges. Shared prosperity today calls for shared responsibility and shared accountability. We count on your support to provide the guidance and resources that will ensure ESCAP delivers on its potential to help you build the future we want for all the people of Asia and the Pacific. I thank you again for being here and look greatly forward to our deliberations this week, which will hopefully be success because of your presence here. Thank you very much.